and it can be picked from there. So in conclusion, I wanted to say that we in Kenya we have implemented we have embraced democratization, and just a way of awareness. We have lots of data in Kenya which can be used by operators. I think most of them are here, and that data, because we have like what the CS mentioned yesterday, we have 52 open blocks. And those blocks have plenty of data, which once used can be able to, like what that company mentioned did. Once that data is being reused, you can end up having a discovery, and that is, you'll end up having a competitive advantage and also generating value from that data. So that is the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening.
A big round of applause for Mr. Kyoga for the presentation and keeping time. Thank you very much. Now, I want to let you know that whatever we are doing here is being recorded, and the rapporteur for this session is Mr. Mwaniki from Kenya. Probably you can raise up your hand for recognition. Good. Thank you. Now, according to the time we have, I have now time for 2 questions, only 2. From the audience. Are there people with questions or comments? You just raise up your hand and then the microphone will be brought to you. Yes, please.
Good afternoon. Edgar Mtunji is my name. From Ministry of Finance, but representing the Uganda EITI, that's Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative. And my question is just centered around handling the tools from the perspective of different mandated institutions. As EITI in Uganda, we had just released our first report, and part of the report recommendations is mainstreaming and systematic disclosure of extractive data. But they require that we host, but the information must be collected and managed at source by the respective mandated institutions and stakeholders. So I think I would like to appreciate your presentation from the perspective of how to harmonize various tools into one tool, and the challenges that may be faced in trying to bring together the responsible institutions to do their part, and how we can come in terms of an entity to support this process. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Nassim Halal. I'm from Sonatrach, Algeria. And I would like to congratulate you for your excellent presentation. My question will relate to the dark data you talked about in the beginning of the presentation. And I'm wondering what are the means and tools that can be used to integrate this dark data into the data management systems that are put in place. Thank you.
Thank you for the questions. I think they are all falling under tools. What I mentioned are under tools, and tools like I mentioned earlier, they are the where the data is sitting, especially softwares, hardwares. We have servers, and also yes, we have those. And tools are, just like I mentioned, they are key components in ensuring that data democratization is achieved, because without them, then the data cannot be accessed easily. And about integration of data in different systems. In the industry, there are several softwares to integrate data. I think I've used Studio. Studio is a very good software for integrating different data sets or different projects together in such a way that you find that different people are working on the same project, but once one is doing, maybe someone is doing seismic interpretation, another one is doing maybe modeling, you find that once this person completes that task, it's been pushed to the next stage, where the next person picks that project from there. Then once that one is done, it's been pushed to the next stage. So you find that there's no duplication of interpretation of that data. Yeah. So I think I've also answered your question. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you very much for those nice explanations. In the interest of time, we are going to move on to the next presenter. I'll ask Mr. Charles Kamunya to move forward. Mr. Charles Kamunya is our next presenter. He is a state counsel in the Ministry of Energy and Petroleum, Kenya. He has a legal background. He has a lot of expertise in the oil and gas industry in relation to legal matters. And this experience spans a period of 10 years. So please let us join and welcome Mr. Kamunya.
Good afternoon. I'm just waiting for the, here it is. So the topic I would like to speak today about is petroleum data management, specifically regulating for data as a valuable resource. So what this presentation seeks to do is to answer the questions you're seeing there. We are going to attempt to define what petroleum data is. Why is it important? What can we do to regulate for data as a valuable resource? Because the key message in this presentation is data is a valuable resource. But if you look at how it's regulated in the laws of several countries, for instance, the East African member states, you can't really say it's a valuable resource. So we're also going to see the roles of the people who are involved in petroleum data management, what they do, and how valuable is data to them, to themselves. And then finally, we are going to look at how data regulatory framework ought to look like. So in defining petroleum data management, there is a definition there. I collected from an authoritative source from the internet, which states that petroleum data means all data and information relating to reconnaissance, exploration, development, or production of petroleum, including rock samples, fluids samples, and plans relating to petroleum operations. So this is what the Law Insider is calling petroleum data. If you prefer a more technical definition of the same, one is available. And what it should cover is different aspects of data, how data presents itself, how it's processed, and so on. So the first thing it should cover is the forms, how data is. Is it raw, analyzed, processed, and so on. The types, and this is a bit technical for me, is 2D, 3D, airborne, geophysical data, gravity, deep seismic, and so on, magnetolurics. Then you also need to cover formats. For this one, I had to consult the technical guys. So I believe the technical people here know what those are. They are shaking their heads. Okay. Then soft copy and hard copy data. So in Kenya, we have a new Petroleum Act 2019, for which we are developing regulations in which, through which we can operationalize the our Petroleum Act. And we have regulations there called the Draft Petroleum Upstream Petroleum Operations regulations, which are also giving a definition, more technical, I believe, which states that petroleum data means quantitative, qualitative data, associated information, documents, reports, images, including raw data, excuse me, edited or composite data, analyzed, interpreted or processed, reprocessed, and samples. So with this definition, I believe then we have covered the points we were looking at in the previous slide. So with respect to the people who are involved in petroleum data management, and what we are seeking to do here is first to understand who are these who are involved in petroleum data, and then see how they treat data. Do they treat it with value? And is governments, ministries, regulators in that group of actors who value data. So governments will, of course, own this data initially, just like the petroleum resource. And I think this is one section that is well covered in the laws, at least of the EAC member states. They use the data for promoting and marketing their blocks of petroleum areas, for revenue, not so much, finding petroleum reserves, especially for the national oil companies. And then, of course, it's used to make investment or to inform investment drilling decisions. Regulators are charged with the mandate of hosting national data repositories, and enforcement of any regulation that is pertaining to petroleum data. Then we have the companies that collect data, which I am calling data acquisition processing companies. And of course, that is their job, and the big chunk of it, and of course, the most rewarding, and why this is valuable to them is because it gives them revenue. Oil companies then, of course, will use the data to make the decisions for drilling and investment. And others, like our good moderator, Daktari, will use data for academic purposes. So this slide is just attempting to show some of the figures we are talking about, especially when you're looking at petroleum data acquisition processing companies. So these are the figures they play around with, where you see some losses in brackets. That was majorly attributed to the COVID crisis, pandemic rather. So I'm sure you've already digested the figures there. So for this one, so this is just to show the value of the global offshore oil and gas seismic equipment and acquisition market, the key drivers and figures. So the value of this industry in 2016 was 3 billion roughly. In 2021, it went up by 1.4 billion. So I took the time to look at some laws and regulations of the EAC member states, and I identified a few gaps, which I've listed there. For example, not all countries will have a government petroleum data policy, something that is going to guide how to treat the data. Yeah. There's no uniform data formats in reporting. If there is no regulation of this, then every IOC in your country will, submit the data in whatever format. And in your data repository, then you will not be, you might, face some challenges in managing the data. There's lack of strict regulation of data. There's lack of data backups, insecure data backups. I am assuming these points are self-explanatory. There's lack of transparency by licensees. And this is what I mean by this is that if you license, a data acquisition company to collect process data, you might not get to know everyone it has licensed to. Yeah, and therefore you might have some difficulty, as you see on the right side, in tracking revenue that would have otherwise come to the government. So there is loose or incomplete chain of custody of data. Lack of disclosure of obligations, as I've explained. There is no oversight or control of third parties, lack or loss of revenue, national security interest, and no labeling or branding. So this means their licensees, the third parties who are getting the process data from the data acquisition companies will not or may not know, your branding is not on the data, which is a practice that I believe has been picking up over the last few years. So from the gaps, then we have proposed areas for regulation. And of course, we are starting with the requirement for governments to develop policies. Just like I'm sure every government has, government or ministry has developed a policy for their petroleum resources. But how much of it is talking to data management? There is ownership. Of course, the law has to say that the government owns the data. And then there's a requirements for labeling and branding when we are coming to third-party licenses. There should be ease of access, uniform data formats for reporting. And I'm seeing as if some of these points are speaking to the previous speaker's presentation on democratization. You should be able, as a government and regulator, to regulate the quality of the data, establish the chain of command or custody of the data so that you always get to know who is in possession of it and whenever it changes hands. You can also prescribe the uses of data in your regulations or in your policy or in your laws. Of course you need to have competitive licensing for Kenya, for example. We have a non-exclusive exploration petroleum permit. So that's just for collecting reconnaissance and so on. So even when you're issuing such a permit or license, whenever possible, you should be able to invite to do it through a competitive process. And of course, you'd be looking at the technical capabilities, financial, legal of whoever is putting in a bid, as well as the most attractive revenue share. The minimum requirements or criteria for applicants, that's connected to the competitive licensing, non-exclusivity in data acquisition, and exclusivity in processing, reprocessing, packaging, promotion, and marketing. So what these 2 points are saying is that you can give multiple licenses or permits for reconnaissance, collection of data in the same area to many, several companies. But of course, what they collect, what they process, what they reprocess, package, and promotion, that is where you give them exclusivity. So I think that will increase, competition and the seriousness of some of these companies. There should be disclosure, a requirement for everyone in possession of the data to have disclosure obligations. Those are who we are calling the licensees. Of course, you should conduct due diligence on applicants. There should be confidentiality obligations so that the data is just not shared or does not change hands without, without you as a government or regulator knowing. So you should also regulate for the approval of or be approving periodic data acquisition, processing, and so on, work budget and program. So if you have given a certain company this job, you should be able to monitor their activities. And one way to do that is to require them to submit their annual work programs and budgets, and also follow up on the same when the same is being implemented after the government has approved. Vetting of third-party licensing agreements. So when these companies are going to license, of course, third parties, they are using a license, which is a legal instrument, and has obligations, rights, benefits, and so on. And I think this is something you need to vet, to check. And also, how much are they licensing this data for? Are you being shortchanged? Of course, then the fiscal provisions, revenue tracking, sharing, reporting, accounting, auditing, and remedies in case there is non-compliance. Robust and adequate proportional offenses and penalties. So for a big breach, you can consider creating an offense and a penalty that is commensurate to the breach. And of course, commensurate to the figures we saw in the dollars we saw in slide 3. Model data acquisition contracts. So this is, if you want to have standardization and an easier time and doing your enforcement and monitoring and compliance and so on, it will be to your benefit if you have standard contracts for everyone, which are not differing materially. And the same for model third-party licenses. So these are some of the areas we can keep looking into so that we appreciate as governments what kind of value or benefits we can draw from our own data. Costs of lost and cost of potential revenue to governments, benefits of effective data management and regulation, and strategic planning for data management regulation. So maybe this is something I can invite our moderator, Dr. John, to follow up on with the Makerere University. I believe that was my last slide. Thank you.
Thank you very much, presenter, for the insightful information about areas of regulation of petroleum data as a resource. I call upon you to clap once more in appreciation for that. Thank you very much. Now, in the interest of time, I'll again call for 2 questions, if there are any, or any comments. Yes, please.
Thank you very much for the presentation. My name is Paul. I would just like to inquire at a regional level, how best can we regulate the transfer of data, especially cross-border data, to benefit the regional bloc on top of what efforts each of the countries are currently undertaking?
Good afternoon, Edgar, once again. My question is centered around the data policy versus the open data policy. as the initiative we just joined as a country, Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative, EITI, they require that some of this information is disclosed openly to the public. So I do not know if there are any experiences you have on having the petroleum data openly disclosed at no cost to the public, especially that is taking into consideration, of course, the sensitive information for revenue, but just to appreciate that as a country, we're now required to have this information openly disclosed. So I just want to find out possible experiences from other countries or your knowledge base. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the questions. I am seeing a hand up. I don't want to usurp the moderator's powers. So let me just go ahead, and the first question, regional transfer of data, how to effectively look at regional transfer of data. I think I wouldn't say, if given that I've not had much time to look at that, that there would be a big challenge. But perhaps one of the things we can consider is having something like a regional framework that will guide how we transfer data amongst ourselves. So I think that's something we can develop as we continue to think about. The second question on data policy, I believe you are talking to open access to data, the experiences. In Kenya, where I come from, we don't have that. But I know Norway these days has an open access, that is their policy with respect to data. And in fact, I went to the website of NPD, Norwegian Petroleum Directorate. I think that is where you can get access of their data, and I think it's pretty easy. It's just that I am a lawyer, and I didn't know what I would look for in terms of petroleum data, but I believe it's there, and perhaps that's something we also need to look further into. Thank you for the questions and your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kamunya. In the interest of time, for those who have more questions, you can follow Mr. Kamunya's Twitter handle. He'll be willing to provide, and then you continue the discussion. Thank you. Now let us move from Kenya to Tanzania. Can I have Mr. Lucas Luhaya coming in front? Luhaga, sorry for the bad pronunciation. Thank you. Mr. Lucas Muhushi Luhaga is a geophysicist by profession with experience spanning a period of 9 years. He is currently working with the Tanzania Petroleum Development Corporation, TPDC, and in the matters relating to data management. He has got training in different universities, and owing to that vast experience in terms of years, we are happy to listen to what he's going to present. You are welcome.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As I have been introduced, my name is Lucas Moshiroaga. Yes, just going direct to the presentation. I'm here to share with you a topic on data management for oil and gas exploration, a case study of our Tanzania National Oil Company. At TPDC, we manage a variety of data in terms of petroleum exploration. But in this presentation, I'm going to focus specifically on geophysical data management, mainly on seismic data. So at CPDC, as we plan for seismic survey, we mainly focus or pay attention to the common sources of data. We ensure that all acquisition parameters are accurately estimated, and also we ensure our data quality control process during the acquisition in the field is well observed. Also, we ensure data processing during processing of the raw data at the processing center, as well as interpretation. This information, we ensure that they reflect the geologies of our area. Also, at TPDC, we store our data in such a way that they are safe and they are easily accessible for further technical analysis. In a nutshell, to say or to confirm that is an economic asset, in our case, we invest capital in open acreage using our well-trained personnel with the required knowledge and skills to acquire the data for exploration and development. But we use the data we have to monitor our producing fields. Also, we use the data to evaluate our reserves. According to the Tanzania Petroleum database, we actually have a total sedimentary basins of more than 500,000 square kilometer area of the sedimentary basin. As you can see from the map, the yellows are the inland basins, and the light blue on the map are the shallow offshore, and the shallow offshore on the coast basin of Tanzania. Also, the blue ones are the deep offshore in the Indian Oceans. So our basins are covered with the 2D seismic data, 3D seismic, full tensor gravity, airborne gravity gradiometry, as well as regional gravity and magnetic data. On top of that, we have total number of wells drilled in the country, 96 wells, from which 60 wells drilled onshore and 36 wells are drilled in the offshore. From the total numbers of wells drilled in our country, we have gas initially in place, volume of gas discovery 57.54 trillion cubic feet. In terms of geophysical data management, we usually receive the incoming data or incoming data median for storage. The data are stored in different medians, as well as from different or various contractors. We receive those data package, we verify and classify the data according to their formats, types, and survey area. We also create data inventory for easy data access, but we also duplicate or produce copies for the upstream regulator, PURA, who regulates the data or is our data custodian in the country. But the physical tapes of data media, we store them in our data server, as you can see from the image. I'm just there trying to do something over there. But also the digital data, we save them in our data server, which is mainly controlled by our ICT technical experts. In terms of data access, we usually access our data for technical analysis and evaluation of the prospectivities of our area. Also, we access the data for promotion and exhibition, but in terms of data for third-party research or publication, under that scenario, we request the data disclosure consent from the upstream regulator, PURA. Or in terms of data security and the protection, we have our Petroleum Act, whereby each personnel is required to comply with that act. That act, it provides guidelines and the limitations on how to disclose or to share data with the third party who is interested to share our data. Also, we ensure that each personnel should comply to the TPDC data access policy, which was published in 2018, whereby that policy it gives the procedures on how third party or any interested person can view our data at the TPDC data viewing room. I have to insist on that. We have a data room for any person or third party to view the data, but not to copy, to view. You can copy if we have already signed maybe the data confidentiality agreement to proceed with the commercial activities. The other thing we ensured that each personnel or third party should also comply to our data server security control, which is under the ICT personnel, whereby our ICTs, they are responsible to provide the credential access to whom should have full access and have the responsibilities to provide the data to employees or third party who have complied with the procedures for data access. In conclusion, proper data management is crucial because it helps in planning and prioritizing our projects. Also, it actually attracts foreign investment. But we know that well-managed data, well-organized data, good quality data can help to monitor our day-to-day operations. But also, the government decision makers, they are always convinced to make a decision based on quantitative and qualitative data analysis. That if we have well-organized data, well-managed data, we can provide good or viable advice to decision makers who can fasten or can speed up the investment process in our country. The last one is, we know that if we manage well our data, they will continue on increasing our government revenue in our East Africa countries. Guys, let's keep it up. Thank you so much. This is my last part of the presentation. That you are all invited to invest in Tanzania. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your very good presentation about the experience of how you manage data in Tanzania. Thank you very much. And can we clap for him? Thank you. Now, again, I'm calling for 2 questions, if there are any from the audience. Yes, Derek.
My name is Derek Mbenyi. Thank you for the presentation. Petroleum Authority of Uganda, Data Management Department. My question is in regard to data access. Most of the employees or users, the geophysicists, the engineers, always generate data from interpretations and models and so on. And this always accumulates. What strategies do you have in place to ensure that this data that has been generated from the users is efficiently and effectively managed, and also in line with the storage capacities? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. My name is Josephat Kyoga, National Oil Corporation of Kenya, Data Management. On your slide 4, you mentioned that you normally do duplication of data and give it to your regulator. So I'm wondering, is it a must for them to have that data for them to regulate you? I don't know, because it seems like you're creating more problem like storage problem by duplicating the data. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Amani, and I just have one question. You mentioned of revenue from data. Assuming there's an investor here, what is the rough figure if somebody wants to purchase data from you for investment purposes?
Thank you. Thank you for the good questions. I'm going to start with the first person who asked the question, that how do we distribute data, or we distribute data efficiently to the users to ensure that they get access to the data. As I have mentioned in my presentation, that we provide access to our employees as well as to third party. But the third party should follow procedures. But the employee, we have our ICT, because all our data are stored in our data server. We have our ICTs. We have a data management team in our corporations, whose role is to ensure that all users, they have the relevant data according to the objective of their activities. They have access to the data, but they do not access it directly from the server. We have a limited number of personnel who are given access to have full access to the server. But those ones are the ones who download the data and they provide it to other employees for technical analysis and other activities. Have I answered your question?
Now, these employees who data, after the employees have accessed that data, they are interpreting data, same models to add value to it, and now that user generate data from the projects or from the softwares is accumulating. So how do you ensure that the users can submit those projects to you, and how are you managing those projects efficiently?
Okay, thank you for your additional question. That I would like to clarify the question that our ICTs are there to create a space in the server, but it is a separate space. You cannot have full access to other data. You are given access to the data package that you want to use, only that. And you do your project and then you leave it there, so that it can be accessed by anyone who needs to use it. Let me go to the second question. Someone asked that we duplicate the data and provide that data to the petroleum petroleum upstream regulator. It is the requirement of our Petroleum Act, because our Petroleum Act is the one who established the upstream regulator. So, and the upstream regulator is the data custodian for petroleum data in the country. So we are the national oil company. We are regulated by them. So it is their responsibility to provide copies, because they have the data center as the data backup in our country. Thank you. The other questions for Mr. Amani Delo, he asked that if we have an investor wanted to view data at TPDC, what is the rates or the cost for data viewing? His question, he said the cost of purchasing. We do not sell data in petroleum industry. we provide the license to access the data. But according to my presentation, as you refer to the portion where I mentioned, to the part where I mentioned data protection and the security, I mentioned the data, TPDC data policy, data access, where that policy, it provides everything, and it is in our website, and the website is open source, so you can access all the information that is, any investor can access that website and they get all the necessary information, including the price, the rate per day, per 3 days, 10 days, months. So everything are there. I hope I have answered your question. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that good explanation. Oh, thank you. So members, we are now moving back to, or we are coming back to Uganda. Our next presenter is Mr. Alan Obalim. Can you please come forward? All right. Mr. Alan Obalim is a manager of ICT at the Petroleum Authority of Uganda. He is well educated. He has a bachelor's in computer science, a master's in information and network security, and a lot of experience in data management. So we are happy to have you here and hear your experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, all. Okay, I'm going to be talking about digital frontiers, particularly the metaverse and digital twins in the oil and gas. You'll notice that actually data is used to build these spaces, and we are here for data management. So let's shoot. That's going to be my agenda. I'll take you through a small introduction into the metaverse and digital twins, its benefits, the challenges in implementing those, case studies, and then the future application, and then conclusions. Yeah, thank you. It's quite small, but yeah, if you zoom in a bit. Well, the metaverse is a virtual world. If you like, you could call it the embodied the embodied internet. It's more of it's a virtual space that augments the real space or the physical world. And so it's a combination of different technologies such as virtual reality, augmented and mixed realities. Now that's the kind of hardware plus the software that drive into that space. We see this application in the oil and gas sector, and it's used majorly to mimic physical assets such as wells, pipelines, and production facilities. On the other hand, digital twins actually are physical replicas, and it's literally a mirrored space of a physical asset. In the oil and gas, the metaverse and digital twins can be used to simulate and optimize operations, monitor equipment performance, conduct virtual drills, simulate production scenarios, improve safety, and conduct virtual meetings. Imagine yourself probably in the upcoming EAPCE's, you are actually physically in Uganda. Say if it's going to be in South Sudan, and you're virtually immersed in South Sudan as an avatar, attending a conference like this. And that's the future. But just to bring this home, the idea of the metaverse came to light in 1992 by one gentleman called Neil Stevenson in a book called The Snow Crash. All right. And the digital twins came to light by the NASA, I think when they built the first spacecraft. That was in 1970. And then the idea was later presented in 1991. Then 2002 as mirrored information models. And ideally, it was just to promote product lifecycle management. And these are both industry 4.0. If you like, you'd call it the Industrial Revolution 4.0 or 5.0. Amidst other technologies like the Web3, the non-fungible tokens, that's the NFT, blockchains, and these are all platforms where we have data decentralized. The previous speakers have been talking about data being centralized and being accessed in different modes. But here you have your data decentralized and you have control over it. And that is where we are going to. You'll notice that these technologies, what you'd call emerging technologies, are literally to add value to the human elements. I know all of us are now interacting with things like the chat GPT and etc. Now that's AI. And I want to affirm to you that I'm actually using AI to present this. So the benefits. One of the main benefits of the metaverse and digital twins in the oil and gas sector is to improve safety. That's very key. And then, of course, it helps you run your virtual simulations as opposed to drilling this physically, because you can make errors. And so you first run it virtually, and we see companies actually, and here companies can identify potential hazards and test safety procedures in a safe way. The first presenter in data democratization talks about predicting, and these are actually platforms that you can use to predict. Another benefit, of course, is increased efficiency. You're using little to gain more. And of course, by creating digital replicas of equipment and systems, you can monitor your performance in real time and also identify areas of improvement. And of course, this helps in reducing downtime, in your operations and maintenance costs, because these get expensive as you're running your operations. Mostly if you're an operator, also if you're a regulator, it impacts your monitoring and regulating of your different sectors. Overall, it increases productivity. Next slide. Of course, this also comes as challenges. It's new spaces that we are trying to traverse. And so implementing the metaverse and digital twins across the oil and gas sector worldwide, not in Uganda just, will require significant investment in technologies. And also, of course, lots of money is involved to come up with these spaces. Besides money, you need the data, because the data is going to help you come up with this sort of space. And we see many companies in the sector may not have that resource, even the expertise. There is a capacity gap. And then, of course, these technologies are things that need to be adopted as swift as the word is. And of course, there are also concerns around data privacy and security. People have been talking about security. And of course, you know, security is about confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Those are the three tenets of information security. And of course, if you're going to be immersed in a virtual space as an avatar, the chances of someone impersonating you are high. And so those are concerns in this area. And because we know these are large data sets that we are playing with, what you'd call big data, which is defined by about, I think, 4 V's: volume, veracity, velocity, value. You get to deal with all sorts of types of data, structured, unstructured, semi-structured. I won't delve, but I'll just keep it at that. And then, of course, these become a weak point for, of course, malicious entities to break into your space. Companies, of course, will also need to implement robust security measures. The teams have been talking about governance measures. But again, there's no regulatory framework for this sort of space. It's new. Some people actually claim that this is something still under research. And again, other schools of thought say this is already in implementation. I'll show you some case studies. Next slide, please. Yes, these are some of the case studies. We have BP, British Petroleum, of course, with their Clear rig platform in the North Sea. And then you also have Shell's Prelude floating liquefied natural gas facility. All these actually being driven by digital twins. And also there's also one which is called EAPCE'23. They actually run their upstream operations using AI, artificial intelligence. And so people don't have to actually go to the rig to do one or two things. It's done remotely. Next slide. And this is the future. The future is now. Actually, you'll notice that big players like the Shell, the likes of BP, are actually doing this. I also want to affirm that as the Petroleum Authority of Uganda, we are getting into a project of setting up a real-time monitoring center, and part of it is also going to have this sort of facility. So it's a new one for us, and we're excited. And so this could be used to, of course, create fully autonomous oil and gas operations, and integrating artificial intelligence or machine learning, which is data science, helps companies develop self-optimizing systems that can adapt changing conditions, simulating petrotechnical models. And we see this being done on the cloud. Some, of course, run it on premise, but these are spaces that are going to help you do that and come up with real-time decision making. These technologies could also be used to create immersive training programs and collaboration spaces. Like I said earlier, the metaverse is your embodied internet. You're immersed in that space, and it's like you're there, but as an avatar. And you don't have to come to Uganda in the event that this facility is available. You just have to put on your VR equipment and you're immersed in here, and you're actually participating and you're collaborating. And that's the future, and that's where we're headed to. And next. In conclusion, the metaverse and digital twins are emerging technologies. We cannot shy away from this. We cannot bury our heads under the sand, that have potential to change the oil and gas sector, not just in Uganda, but across the world. And of course, this is going to add value by improving safety and increasing efficiency and optimization. You're going to narrow down your costs and push up your profits. It's also going to, implementing these technologies, of course, will require significant investment. And you're going to need support from the private sector and government agencies, and also technology providers, to make sure that the right support and resources are in place. And we believe that as Uganda, our oil and gas sector, we aim to become a leader in adopting these applications, like the metaverse and the digital twins in our operations. I'm just going to share a small video of BP's EAPCE digital twin so that the message can drive home properly. I think 1 minute. Oh yeah, that's it. Some volume, please. You could rewind and replay it again.
Built digital twins of all our production systems. From Atlantis in the Gulf of Mexico, to Clare in the North Sea, and Tangguh in Indonesia. We call the digital twin EAPCE', but what is it? We'll show you. A production system would take a while, so let's make one of this person. We'll start by building the structure, all the blueprint data. Our systems are more complex than just the hard surfaces though, so we need to add in the dynamics, the flow regimes, the pressures and temperatures. We populate EAPCE' with all the historical data. Sensors send real-time data to the digital twin, just like the sensors you can wear. These sensors bring the digital proxy to life, until we have a fully functioning copy of the physical asset, a digital twin. Give it a wave. Wiggle your fingers. Dance the rumba. Dance the rumba. Dance the rumba. Okay, never mind. Now that we've built the digital twin, we can use it to help monitor, simulate, and optimize production. Just like mastering the perfect swing. Please hit the ball. Have another try. Great, great, good hit. Now, how can we make it better? Let's see the hit again. We use our digital twin to run simulations. So just like learning the perfect baseball swing, we can learn how to improve on our objective, testing all the different variables until we find the optimal solution. We're using EAPCE to make our entire production system more efficient, from well through facilities to export, simulating how to produce more oil with less water or with less gas. We can also use it to test how to deal with curveballs, like if we need to cut production from a well, or if we need to bypass some pipework, like a faulty elbow. Virtually verifying before refining the real. That's BP Digital Energy.
All right. So ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, that's the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that enjoyable presentation about digital innovation and data management as regards petroleum. Now, in the interest of time, I'm going to allow only one question for the presenter. Yes, please.
Now, I was hoping you're going to say a little bit more, because I mean, we can talk the whole day about this, right? It's actually very funny because one of your case studies, I worked on it, the Prelude, the FLNG. We basically use the 3D model, not necessarily for operation, but just to building it up and getting all the geometry and all, making sure that all the descriptive quantities and all those are linked to the model, because that's very important, right? What I wanted to add on really is having to use 3D models and all that is not just limited to just the operation side. It helps throughout the planning if you want to do estimation. It also helps if you are building, right? For instance, if you're fabricating from a different location. I know right now Shell is doing something similar for an LNG project where they're building in one location, but all the fabrication is happening on a different site. And they're able to go in there with their sort of like scanning machines, helping them understand how their physical asset is coming along from a different location before the sail away date. So just wanted to say, you know, adopting it is very critical, not just during operations, but throughout the project lifecycle. And that is currently happening, by the way. So it's not something that is not doable. Other people are doing it. You just need to spend a lot more time on it, and also understanding, you know, some of the benefits that your project may gain throughout your operation as well. So thanks a lot for that.
All right. Thank you. Actually, that's just an addition. It's not a question, but thank you for that, because it has immense applications, really.
I have a question. Since there was no question, then I will ask. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Now, my question, I'll just go direct to the question. I didn't see you presenting about it. There is this recent advancement in use of quantum computing. So I've realized that oil and gas data is quite enormous and quite sensitive. So you have challenges with security and also its kind of size. So are there any chances or case studies where you've noticed people turning to use qubits instead of bits? Thank you very much.
Okay, maybe just quickly, I know Total Energies is doing something in line with their upstream operations in Uganda. And they're going quantum because, like you said, you're dealing with large data sets, aspects to do with big data. Like I mentioned, you're dealing with data that is coming in with high volumes. There's veracity, there's value, and etc. And of course, it's made up of structured, unstructured, and semi-structured, all coming in at the same time. And so you find that the quantum space actually gives you leverage, yeah, to actually process this efficiently. And so it's a wide terrain, and we can talk this until the cows come back. But it's one of those things actually that I would also employ different entities to look into, because it's one of those things that's going to help you efficiently process your data and avail it to your target audiences. So Yeah, quantum computing was one of those key spaces, and we see lots of AI being processed using such platforms. So it's one of those new areas that are very interesting, and I believe the sector can actually ride on those. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Round of applause for Mr. Obali. Now, in the interest of time, I'm going to call on the last speaker, last but not least, to come forward. Our last presenter is Mr. Andrew Ochan, who is a manager in charge of data management at the Petroleum Authority of Uganda. He has a lot of experience in that field and is going to share more with us here. You are welcome.
Right. Good afternoon. Thank you, Dr. Kiberu. Dr. Kiberu taught me geophysics many years ago in Makerere University. Although I look much older than him, I don't know. I need to find out his tricks for staying young. So we are going to look more into the data, and I'm glad that the previous speakers have already, laid the foundation by mentioning all those complicated terms. Alan talking about AI, digital twins, and then the others talking about the data types that I'm going to mention. So this presentation or the paper, there is actually an academic paper that was published based on this. Was done together with my collaborators, Dr. Shastri Nimagada in Curtin University, and Christine Namugenyi, who is a researcher in this aspect of data modeling and data mining. So the topic is managing multidisciplinary sedimentary basin data in the context of the East African Rift System. Next. So here is a summary. In case I rush through the presentation, you should just remember this. So the oil and gas industry is faced with many challenges, especially where you have various assets, say in different countries or even in different sedimentary basins that are scattered in different geographical entities. There is the adoption of technology is a bit low. I think other industries are moving faster, like the commerce field, exploiting trade data and things like that. They're moving faster than it is being done in the oil and gas industry. So in this study, we propose a 5-layered model for integration and automation of data in the industry. Let's move on. Now, I already mentioned those challenges. And so everyone is talking about integration. Now, in this 5-layered model, the key aspect is that we are looking at beginning with modeling the data entities, but ending up with an integrated framework within which the data is managed. Let's move on to the next slide. The objectives are there. I'm not going to read through them, but really understand that it's about leveraging the data that we have and creating value out of it. Most people understand data management as data storage or data archival. That is only one aspect of data management, but you can actually extract more value from this data. And that is what those objectives are talking about. Next. Let's move on. I think you went back. So yes, we propose a 5-layered framework, and the first layer there is using cloud computing. So you have your data, but it resides in the cloud, meaning from any location, you can actually get the data and do the modeling. So the second layer talks about the transmission network. The data is collected from the field, okay? Oil and gas field. But you need to move this data from the field to a location where it's stored. And so you use various installations basically ICT infrastructure, including fiber optic and so on and so forth. Now, the third layer there is what they call ontology, intelligent language. That, in short, is just the database, the kind of database that is used for managing this data. And so the data we are talking about is structured data that can be stored in a database with certain key attributes. The fourth layer is sensor technologies. I said that the data is collected from the field, but what picks the actual data are actually sensors installed maybe in the well or in the pipeline, at various locations in the field. And then the final layer there is smart monitoring system. You need dashboards within which you can display this data and make sense out of it. If it's in real time, you will be seeing the data parameters varying in real time. So that is the 5-layered framework. In the next slide, I'm going to show you how it can be put in the context of the East African Rift System. Move on next. Next. Yes. So the modeling, basically, I don't know how many people have IT background in the audience. It seems it's only Alan. So basically, you are modeling the data. You are looking at the metadata, which you pick and pick certain key attributes. So the modeling here that is done is in the context of one sedimentary basin, say. But you could have this modeling done for different basins, okay? And then later we are talking about integration. So you must have a data warehouse where you have the data stored and then pick the data attributes and do the actual modeling. So in the data modeling world, we talk of schemas, ontology. I don't want to bore you with that. Alan would understand that. I think most of you are geoscientists and engineers. So let's move on. Next. Okay, so I already mentioned this. You have various data attributes. You pick from the database. You could have several databases, seismic, wells, reservoir, production. But all these are integrated. I had Kyoga mention Studio. Studio is one data integration tool, but there are others, okay? And then you have this stored in an E&P data warehouse. Now, it is from the warehouse that you can, start doing the modeling and leveraging different tools of the fourth industrial revolution. The 4IR tools, Internet of Things, AI, big data, and so on. Next. So that is what you're seeing there is the East African Rift System. And I said that, for example, you would have these data attributes modeled for the Albertine Graben, which is far left north. You could do the same for the Lake Tanganyika Basin, Malawi, and then the eastern arm of the Rift System. Next. And so when you do those, if Albertine Graben is one aspect of the basin you're looking at, numbered 1, and then Tanganyika is 2, and then the eastern arm is 4, and Malawi is 5, you could have data modeling is about finding commonalities between different data aspects. So you could do this modeling as shown there in that aspect. You connect based on those commonalities. Next. I think I am going to conclude, move to the concluding slide. Next. All right. So in this presentation, really, I hope I've managed to show you that we could dig into the data and in the context of various assets, of various sedimentary basins, but we bring this into an integrated framework using a 5-layered ontology model. And so we could use and leverage on the 4th industrial revolution technologies, such as big data, Internet of Things that are used to collect the data at various points within the field and assets. And it is from the data that is stored in the warehouse that you could start talking about digital twins that Alan was talking about. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrew, for the presentation. I can tell you that my former student has performed well. I don't know whether you have any questions for him. If there's any, then I can allow only one, in the interest of time. Okay. Thank you very much. Can we clap for him? So I thank you very much for your attention. I have some announcement to make. The lunch coupons will be given out in front of the entrance of the gate. I mean the tent where we had lunch yesterday. It is as you go out of this building. The lunch coupons will be provided from there. So after here, you are advised to move directly to that place. Then secondly, I'm calling upon all the presenters of today to come forward for a photo shoot and also some presents. Okay. Please, can you come forward? Thank you very much for your attention. The session is now closed.